Well, good morning, and thank you for coming.
Dobro jutro i hvala što ste došli.
It's early on a Sunday morning,
Ovo je rano, nedjeljno
and
jutro.
you got 1 hour's less sleep, so you are very, you're very, that could well be. But thank you for coming out.
U svakom slučaju hvala vam za sve, iako vam 1 sat sna fali, pa se osjećamo tako.
The last presentation today then will be about some issues, some things to think about when it comes to caring for adults.
I ovo današnje predavanje će govoriti nešto o brizi za odrasle ljude.
I'd like to start just by sharing a little bit of my mom's story.
Želim početi sa jednom kratkim dijelom priče o moje majci.
That's my mom right there. I don't know if you can see her properly where the picture comes out, but she's the one all the way on the left.
Evo, ovo ovdje je moja majka.
She became a carer for my father when she was 86 years old.
Ona je bila njegovatelj mojeg oca kad je imala 86 godina.
And he was 84.
A ona je bila 84.
So sometimes you're caring for someone that's younger than yourself, even though you're fairly old.
Tako da stvarno su bili prilično stari u to doba.
And he became sick, had a couple of strokes and became less and less mobile.
On je imao nekoliko udara i jednostavno postajao sve manje i manje pokretan.
My father was about the same size as me, but a little bit bigger.
Moj otac je otprilike moje visine, ali je bio nešto krupniji.
And you can't really get it from the picture, but my mom's about this high.
Možda ne vidite to sa ove slike, ali moja mama je otprilike ove visine.
So you can imagine trying to look after someone that is quite big and is bedbound. I mean, in the bed most of the time.
I sad možete zamisliti kako je to bilo kad se neko tako mora brinuti za neko ko je prilično velik i još je prikovan za krevet. Zapravo prikovan većinu vremena.
She tried to look after him as best as she could because there's no real social care system in Jamaica. They were living in Jamaica.
Oni žive na Jamajci i ona je to napravila na najbolji mogući način kako je znala i umjela, jer tamo nije baš nešto razvijen taj socijalni rad i briga za takve slučajeve.
It's a poor third world country, so there isn't much social care.
To je siromašna zemlja trećeg svijeta koja nema razvijen takav nekakav društvenu brigu.
And each time we would talk with her, because we were living in England and she was there on her own in the house with my dad, you could see that she was getting more and more tired.
I kad god bismo razgovarali, znači ja iz engleske bih ih nazvao, mogao sam čuti da je ona sve umornija i umornija.
And she felt it was her duty, obviously, to be looking after her husband.
Naravno, vidjelo se da ona smatra to svojom dužnošću da se brine za svog supruga.
And we kept trying to encourage her to get some help, at least at home.
Probali smo je ohrabriti da se pronađe nekakvu pomoć, barem u kući, oko kućanskih poslova.
And eventually she did that.
I ona je to napravila.
But what was really interesting was, for example, when the help would come and then she could go out and do shopping, etc.
I evo recimo interesantno, znači kad bi neko došao njoj pomoći u kući, ona bi izašla van u kupovinu.
My father didn't want them to help him, only my mother.
Ali otac nije želio da se oni drugi bave njime, nego isključivo majka.
So he would wait until she comes home before he would get, have anything done. So he really didn't help much in that sense.
I stoga na taj način nije to bila neka jako velika pomoć, jer opet bi je sve ti poslovi oko oca čekali kad se vrati kući.
When he really became very bedbound, she couldn't lift him or anything like that.
Kad je on stvarno postao prikovan za krevet, ona ga nije mogla više ni dići, ni ništa takvog.
There were a couple of times actually he fell out of the bed and she had to call the neighbors to help her get him back into the bed.
Par puta on bi recimo pao sa kreveta i ona je morala pozvati susjede da je pomognu da ga dignu natrag na krevet.
And we really had to encourage her a lot to try and put him in a home. I
stvarno smo morali puno ohrabrivati da ona ipak njega da u neki dom da se stručno brinu.
Because if she continued that way, she'd end up dead and he would be, it would be even worse.
Jer da je to tako nastavilo, na kraju ona bi umrla, a on bi ostao živ u sve gorem i gorem stanju.
So eventually she did. It was a big battle, but she did actually put him into a home.
I u konačnici ona ipak, nakon prilično velike borbe, je pristala na to da ipak bude u domu.
But then the challenge was that he was saying to her, how could you do this to me?
A izazov je bio u tome što na kraju je on rekao njoj, pa kako si mi to mogla učiniti?
So you can imagine the extra burden on her psychologically that she had done this to her husband that she'd been married to for over 50 odd years. Yeah?
I sad zamislite taj dodatni psihološki teret koji je bio stavljen na nju, jer oni su bili u braku preko 50 godina.
So he was in the home for a number of months.
On je bio u domu nekoliko mjeseci.
But then she saw that he was losing weight and he wasn't thriving at all.
I onda ona vidjela da on mršavi, da ne ide to tako.
And he wasn't really being looked after that well either.
Nije tako bio niti dobro zbrinut.
So she took him back home again.
I ona ga je uzela natrag kući.
And tried again to look after him.
I nastavila opet probati da se brine o njemu.
But that was definitely not sustainable.
Ali to nije bilo održivo.
So again we say, could she try and find another home? Because you have to pay for it yourself. So she tried to find another home that he could go into.
I stoga smo razgovarali i nagovarali da proba naći neki drugi dom. Mislim, dom treba plaćati u svakom slučaju.
And they did find another home and he went into that one.
I onda je našla jedan drugi dom gdje su ga primili i tamo je išao.
They looked after him better.
Bolje su se brinuli o njemu.
But the psychological pressure of how could you have done this to me just was unbearable for her, really.
Ali taj psihološki pritisak, kako si mi to mogla učiniti, bilo je jednostavno za nju pretežak.
And again, she brought him back home.
I opet vratila ga je kući.
But then she was able to get some nursing care, basically 24-hour nursing care at home with him.
Ali tada je već uspjela dobiti da ima nekakvu medicinsku njegu kod kuće 24 sata dnevno.
And basically after 3 years he died at home.
I otprilike nakon 3 godine takvog života on je umro kod kuće.
I think her kind of experience is very typical for when you're looking after adults. There's so many things that are in there that we can explore even.
Takva priča je prilično tipična kad god se radi o njegovanju odraslih. Ima tu toliko puno tih detalja koji su tu upleteni.
One of the things when it comes to looking after adults is dealing with the varying emotions that you go through.
Jedna od bitnih stvari je tu što trebate raditi sa emocijama.
So there's stress, the pressure of caring for somebody all the time.
Tu je stres zbog neprestane brige o nekome drugome cijelo vrijeme.
There's worry about the safety of the person, etc.
Tu je briga za sigurnost te osobe i tako dalje.
There's concern about the future.
Zabrinutost za budućnost.
There can be anger as well. Those kind of feelings come.
Također dolazi emocija ljutnje. Zašto se to događa?
And as I mentioned to you, guilt and shame, all of that, she felt extra, especially from my dad feeling that he shouldn't have been where he was.
I još ekstra to su osjećaji srama i grižnje savjesti i tuge zbog svega onoga što je još bilo nametnuto.
Frustration, yes, we heard that often when we were speaking with her on the phone, just that, feeling powerless in order to help him in any way.
I naravno tu je frustracija koju se mogla osjetiti kad god smo pričali telefonom, jer ona se uvijek osjećala tako bespomoćno.
Isolation is a big challenge.
Izolacija je također i veliki izazov.
Especially when they were living in Jamaica and we were all in England. We couldn't just get on a bus and go there and help out. It was very difficult.
Onda, pogotovo zbog toga što oni su živjeli na Jamajci, mi smo u Engleskoj, mi ne možemo samo tako, ajde, skokni autobusom na dan malo uskočimo.
Fear of stigma may be another emotion.
Zatim tu je bila isto takva emocija straha od nekakve stigmatizacije društva.
And eventually there is this kind of loss of a sense of who you are because all you're doing is caught up in the care of somebody else.
I onda, zato što često ljudi znaju pitati, pa dobro, šta ti radiš? Mislim, brineš za jednu osobu.
So I think when it comes to emotions and dealing with emotions, it's really very important.
I stoga to izlaženje na kraj sa emocijama, tim raznim emocijama koje dolaze, to je jedna od bitnih stvari.
I think that may be one of a topic to explore in the center that you have, because I know you have an expert here that's dealing with emotional intelligence.
I vjerojatno i u savjetovalištu radite sa tim govorom o tim emocijama. Evo, tu je jedan ekspert za kako izaći na kraj s emocijama.
But maybe something focused on dealing with emotions as carers might be something to think about for the future.
I vjerojatno jedna od tema za neko od tih govora tamo bi mogla biti to kako da njegovatelji izađu na kraj sa svojim emocijama.
One of the other things that need to think about is how to handle difficult conversations.
I još jedan izazov je tu, a to je kako voditi one teške razgovore.
Because I think when it comes to caring for adults, there are many conversations you have to have, and some of them aren't necessarily pleasant.
I kad god ste njegovatelji, onda ima tih nekakvih tema o kojima treba razgovarati i nije to baš ugodno.
It might be, for example, having to talk with a parent that cannot live on their own anymore.
Recimo kad morate razgovarati sa roditeljem da mu objasnite da više ne može živjeti sam.
I remember my mother-in-law when she was living on her own for many years.
Recimo, sjećam se svoje punice, ona je godinama živjela sama, samostalno.
But the children would sometimes find that she had left a pan on the fire and it was burning, or those kind of things, and food wasn't properly cooked and spoiling.
I recimo djeca bi navratila kod nje doma i onda vide kako je ostavila nešto da se kuha, ostavila na otvorenu plamenu i to je odavno zagorilo. Ili nešto nije bilo uopće dovoljno kuhano ili nešto je skroz bilo.
So she was becoming a danger for herself.
Ona je postala sama sebi opasnost.
And so that's not an easy conversation to suddenly say, I think you need to be somewhere where you can get some extra care. It was difficult.
I nije lako voditi razgovor sa takvom osobom da kažeš, znaš šta sada mislim da se više ne možeš baš sama brinuti, trebaš ići nekamo da još dobiješ dodatnu pomoć.
There are also a lot of conversations you have with professionals.
I naravno imate i puno razgovora koje treba obaviti sa profesionalcima.
And it's very easy as a carer to feel that you are on the defensive and they know everything because they're the all-powerful professionals.
I lako da se osjećate da ste u nekoj defenzivi jer oni svi sve znaju, a ja ovdje abo.
But as I was saying yesterday with us caring for Esben, often you know the person much better than any professional does.
Ali baš kao što sam mi rekao jučer u predavanju kada sam govorio o svom sinu Espenu, najčešće mi smo ti koji osobu poznaju puno bolje kako je njoj i kako to ide nego li što znaju svi ti profesionalci.
So don't undervalue your role as a carer.
Stoga nemojte nikada podcjenjivati svoju ulogu njegovatelja.
You're bringing very valuable information to the whole care team.
Vi ste oni koji imate izuzetno važne informacije za cijeli taj tim koji se brine.
And without you, what they do wouldn't be as effective. So don't undervalue yourself.
I bez te vaše pomoći, tih vaših informacija, to ne bi bilo tako efikasno ni dobro, stoga nikad nemojte sebe podcjenjivati.
But sometimes we have to have some very direct conversations with professionals, and that can be a difficult thing to do.
A koji puta stvarno trebamo imati nekakve direktne razgovore sa profesionalcima, a to zna biti zeznuto.
Sometimes we have to have conversations with other family members, like our siblings.
A koji puta treba voditi razgovore i sa drugim članovima obitelji, recimo braćom, sestrama.
Especially if you feel like you have the greater burden of care and they aren't pulling their weight. I mean, that's a tough conversation to have sometimes.
Recimo, ako mislite da vi ste ti koji ste potegli većinu posla i onda malo razgovarate o tome, to zna biti nezgodno.
Sometimes it may be even talking with friends who tend to distance themselves when you're in a caring situation.
Isto tako, koji put zna biti teško razgovarati sa prijateljima koji se nekako distanciraju kad ste vi nađete u ulozi njegovatelja.
And letting friends know, hey, I'm still here, I still, value your friendship, I still need support.
I treba im onda jasno reći da, gle, ja sam još uvijek ovdje, još uvijek mi treba tvoje prijateljstvo i treba mi nekakva podrška.
So maybe just one tip when it comes to some of these conversations.
Evo možda jedan naputak kad smo već kod tih konverzacija.
It might be good to talk through what you're going to say with somebody that's outside of the situation beforehand.
Možda možete razgovarati sa nekim, proći kroz cijeli taj razgovor sa nekime koji uopće nije u to upleten.
Because they can listen to how you might present it and maybe say, well, perhaps adjust that and maybe you could add this. It's good to have thought it through and talked it through first.
Znači, u tom slučaju možete dobiti nekakav povratnu informaciju, kaže, ok, možda da ovo kažeš malo drugačije, naprosto općenito kroz takav nekakav razgovor proći prije u mislima, proći uživo sa nekim, malo uvježbati razgovor.
So communication is really important. So just a few tips when it comes to how to communicate well.
Dakle, komunikacija je izuzetno bitna i evo nekoliko naputaka kako dobro komunicirati.
Remaining polite and calm and patient is really very important.
Ostati ljubazan, smiren, strpljiv, to je izuzetno bitno.
If you're too, maybe the Balkans is a little bit different because I know you're a little bit more confrontational maybe.
Možda je to malo različito ovdje na Balkanu, znam da ste malo tako,
So you have to take this from an Englishman, okay?
Tako da evo ja kao Engles to pričam.
But generally, if you're calm with a person, then you'll get more cooperation. If you're too bold and bombastic, they just pull away and they don't care.
Dakle, u svakom slučaju treba biti strpljiv i lagano to, jer ako krenete naglo i bombastično, vjerojatno ćete naići na ozbiljni otpor.
And try to be as objective and non-judgmental as possible when you're communicating.
Trudite se da budete objektivni i neosuđujući.
Especially if being very critical and accusing, say, you do this, that, people generally get very defensive. It's not good.
Da. Pogotovo ako krenete sa onim, ti si to napravio, to obično se ljudi nakon toga povlače i budu prilično defansivni u obrambenom stavu.
But of course, being firm and specific is important.
Znači, treba biti pozitivno koliko god je moguće u toj situaciji.
Saying what you want, what it is you actually mean is really quite important for good communication.
Da, bitno je reći što osjećaš i što si htio reći, ali način je isto jako bitan u komunikaciji.
And staying focused on what you're talking about is good too.
Ostanite fokusirani na ono što želite reći.
I've often said to people, write down what it is that you want to say, because once you're in the situation, sometimes the emotions make you forget. So write down what you want to bring up with, for example, the doctor or whoever it is.
Često kažem ljudima, zapiši to što želiš reći, jer kad jednom dođeš u tu konverzaciju, moguće da te preplave emocije i onda stvari krenu u raznim smjerovima. Ovako ćete ostati fokusirani.
Sometimes, especially when you're dealing with professionals, they seem to sidetrack and be leading you away from the situation.
Pogotovo to vrijedi kada idete razgovarati sa liječnicima i drugim profesionalcima, jer često vas mogu odvesti na možete otići na nekakvu stramputicu.
So stay on topic, repeat what you've had to say until they really get what it is that you're trying to bring across.
Znači, jednostavno ostanite fokusirani, držite se teme o kojoj želite pričati, ponovite po potrebi da biste bili sigurni da ste ono što ste htjeli reći doista i prenijeli.
And yes, be open to listen to what the other person's saying, obviously.
Naravno, treba biti otvoreni da čuti ono što druga osoba ima za reći.
And ask for clarifications, yes.
Pitati za pojašnjenja, naravno.
And don't be afraid of silence.
I nemojte se plašiti tišine.
Sometimes you just need a little pause just to be able to think a little bit, and it's okay.
Često ljudi trebaju onako jednu malu pauzu da malo razmisle i to je u redu.
And then being aware of the person you're speaking with, and even, expressing gratitude is really important.
I također iskazivanje nekakve zahvalnosti isto je jako bitno.
And of course, we know when it comes to communication that it's not just what you say, it's how you are postured, what your body is saying as well, that's important.
I naravno, kao i u toj komunikaciji, kao i u svakoj drugoj, jako je bitan vaš govor tijela.
And I'm sure, sitting square and having an open posture rather than,
Znači, sjedite otvoreni, da neke poze nisu.
And eye contact and making sure that you're following what the person's saying is important.
Da, kontakt očima je isto izuzetno bitan, da osoba shvati da je pratite.
And relaxing, trying to speak as slowly as you can, because when we get emotional, we tend to speak a whole lot faster, so they're important things to remember.
I opustite se. Govorite polako, jer kada budemo emotivni, onda smo skloni jako brzo pričati.
But something else to remember then is your own health and well-being.
I još jedna stvar koju morate držati uvijek na umu, a to je vaše vlastito zdravlje i vaše vlastito dobrobit.
I think as carers, especially for adults, we can get very lost in doing care for them.
Pogotovo kada se bavimo njegovanjem odraslih, mi se znamo poslije izgubiti u toj brizi.
But if you look after yourself, you'll be able to help them a whole lot better.
Ali ako brinete i za sebe same, možete i njima puno bolje pomoći.
So, taking a break is really important.
Uzeti odmor, pauzu je izuzetno bitno.
It's a way to boost your own health, obviously.
Očito tu možete onda unaprijediti vlastito zdravlje.
And sometimes, actually, spending time away from the person you're caring for helps them be more appreciative of you.
I isto tako, kada ta osoba bude malo bez vaše konkretne pomoći, pomaže toj drugoj osobi da malo više cijeni to što vi radite.
This is a difficult one, I know, and as I was saying with my mom, my father just couldn't tolerate the fact that he would be in a home instead of in his own home.
Mislim, to zna biti jako, jako teško. Evo, recimo, iz primjera mojeg oca, što sam ispričao, moj otac nije mogao podnijeti to, on je to previše prebacio na mamu, što je morao biti u nekom drugom domu, ne u svom vlastitom.
But sometimes people value a change of scenery, being in another place, and then when they come back to wherever it is, they can be a lot happier because they've had a change of scenery.
Ali isto tako, ako im se povremeno onako malo promijeni scenarij u kojem žive, znaju kad se vrate natrag biti puno nekako suradljiviji i zahvalniji na tome.
And taking a break for yourself can help you realize just how stressed you perhaps are, because you're away from the situation for a little while and then you can assess yourself.
I isto tako, kad se napraviš takav nekakav odmak, možeš postati puno svjesniji vlastitog stresa kojeg nosiš cijelo vrijeme, zato što jednostavno odjednom progledaš na tu temu.
So what kind of break? What does a break look like?
Evo, kako bi mogao jedan takav odmak izgledati?
It differs from person to person.
Različit je od osobe do osobe.
Somebody might just need an hour each week.
Nekima je dovoljno sat vremena tjedno.
An occasional day here and there.
Ili onako jedan slobodni dan tu i tamo.
It may be a whole week or two's holiday. You know it your own self.
Da, nekima je to u obliku praznika na tjedan, dva.
And how do we make that happen?
Kako mi napravimo da se to dogodi?
And this is the big question often, are the family and friends that can help?
Mislim, uvijek mogu, možda uskočiti prijatelji, obitelj.
Is there some social care that you can get while you take a break?
Možda postoji nekakva u zajednici, nekakva pomoć koju možete si uzeti dok vi odete na odmor.
And I know that respite care is something you can get in England. Here it sounds like it's very difficult. I'm not too sure what you can get in terms of respite care here.
Ovi govore o tom nekakvom odmoru uz predah. Znači, ta pomoć dok si vi uzimate taj predah od posla, ne znam baš točno kako je to ovdje regulirano, niti kako to ovdje funkcionira. Oni imaju to u Engleskoj.
From what I was hearing yesterday, if you can pay for someone possibly to come and help, but there isn't much that's provided for you.
Koliko je uspio shvatiti jučer iz naših razgovora, ovdje postoji tako nešto, ali se mora platiti. Nema tako nečega da možete dobiti gratis od strane društva.
I think it is important though that you do deal with your own guilt when it comes to taking a break.
Isto tako morate znati da kada dođe do takvog odmora, morate se raditi i na svojem osjećaju krivnje.
Either from your own self,
bilo da si sami namećete tu krivnju,
or maybe the person is making you feel guilty like my father did.
Ili da ta druga osoba vas čini da se osjećate loše, kao što je to činio njegov otac.
But be very conscious of that so that because you will come back stronger if you're able to take a break.
Ali budite vrlo oprezni sa time, zato što morate biti svjesni da ćete se nakon takvog predaha vratiti jači i snažniji.
So taking a break is really quite important.
Stoga uzimanje tog odmora je izuzetno bitno.
A second thing, at least with the UK, is talking to your GP.
Pogotovo o tome, jako je bitno razgovarati sa svojim liječnikom.
You can educate me, because in the UK, the first person you go to is your GP, your doctor.
Znači,
yeah?
Yeah,
it's the same thing here.
It's the same thing here.
All right,
znači,
yeah.
prva stvar u Engleskoj, isto kao i kod nas, je da odlazimo kod svog liječnika opće prakse.
In the UK, carers are a category that's recognized. So your GP actually is the first person that you go to say, I am a carer.
Ne, sad u Engleskoj je ta status njegovatelja je poprilično dobro prepoznat, tako da prva osoba kojoj kažete ja sam sada njegovatelj je vaš odabrani liječnik.
And then that should start the ball rolling, because then they know that you perhaps are going to need some extra support with different things. Yeah.
I sada znači onda on je ona osoba koja nakon toga preuzima jedan dio te kontrole, jer on zna šta će vam sve trebati.
I don't know if that happens so much here, but at least, yeah, it's really important that once you recognize that you're a carer, and remember I said yesterday, sometimes it takes a couple of years for people to recognize that. Znači,
jednom kada prepoznate da ste njegovatelj, kao što sam jučer rekao, treba nekim ljudima par godina da shvate da su i oni u toj ulozi.
Then the GP then can make sure that all the support you need you get access to it in some way.
I u tom slučaju onda vaš taj odabrani liječnik se pobrine da imate pristup svim onim podršci koje vam stoji na raspolaganju, a možda ne znate za nju.
A big thing in the UK is to make sure that carers get their flu jabs. I don't know if
Aha.
Oh, yeah.
Aha. Znači, jedna od stvari koje tamo daju onda je ta, recimo, cjepivo protiv gripe.
Because generally the people you're looking after are quite vulnerable.
Zato što često su ljudi za koje brinete su vrlo osjetljivi.
So they want to make sure that the carers are fully immune to each winter you're getting flu, etc., those kinds of things.
I stoga su onda brinu da ti njegovatelji budu imuni na sve te boleštine koje inače na svakoj zime dođu.
And I'm not getting into debates about coronavirus and all of that. It's just about the flu. Yeah.
Neću ići sada ni u kakvu debatu o cjepivima za koronu.
But generally, you see, your GP will ensure that you are fully vaccinated, protected yourself, protecting those that you're looking after. That's the point of this.
No, osnovni cilj ovoga je da se vaš odabrani liječnik pobrine da ste vi potpuno zaštićeni, na taj način štitite i osobu za koju se brinete.
Next one is the importance of good nutrition.
Iduća stvar je važnost dobre prehrane.
That's good nutrition for yourself as a carer.
I to dobre prehrane vas kao njegovatelja.
But then also nutrition for the adult that you're looking after.
ali također i prehrane te odrasle osobe za koje se brinete.
There can be all kinds of challenges when it comes to nutrition for adults that need to be cared for.
I tu ima jako puno raznih izazova koji mogu biti stavljeni pred vas kad se trebate brinuti za nekog odraslog.
Some that are more immobile can put on a lot of weight.
Zato što ako je neko nepokretan, on se može poprilično udebljati.
At the same time, some lose their appetite and lose a lot of weight.
S druge strane, neki drugi oni pak izgube apetit i onda izgube jako puno.
And again, I know at the center you do healthy cooking, etc.
I vidio sam u ovom savjetovalištu da radite i ono zdrave kuhinju i tako dalje.
So maybe this could be a theme as well. If you're going to focus on carers, you could look at nutrition for carers as a course to offer.
Znači, evo recimo prijedlog za jedan tečaj jeste kako bi trebala biti prehrana za njegovatelje.
Well, I'm not even going to go into it. I'm sure you can find out lots that can be done, but it really is important to get a good balanced diet.
I stvarno vjerujem da se može napraviti dobro izbalansirana dijeta za svakoga.
Because carers tend to neglect themselves, and again, for you to have the energy to be able to care well, you need to be looking after yourself first and foremost.
I to zna biti priličan izazov stavljen pred njegovatelje, zato što su oni skloni puno više toga davati, brinuti za nekog drugog i onda sebe stave u drugi plan, a zapravo bi trebalo biti obrnuto. Trebaju dobrano brinuti za sebe da bi bili u stanju se dobro brinuti za druge.
Another area is getting enough sleep.
I još jedno područje, treba se dobro naspavati.
We were saying about how sleep deprived we can often be, especially as carers for children.
I pričali smo o tome koliko možemo imati pomanjkanje sna, recimo ako smo njegovatelji djece.
But it can be exactly the same for adults too.
Isto može biti i kada ste njegovatelji odraslih.
Somebody was sharing with me yesterday when they were caring for their mother.
Netko je bio podijelio jučer sa mnom da se brine o svojoj staroj majci.
That for the years they were caring for the mother, they never got a full night's sleep.
I da je godinama to bilo da preko noći nikad nije odspavalo u komadu.
And that can be really, really difficult.
To zna biti jako, jako teško.
And even for those that are able to sleep for most of the night.
Čak i za one koji većinu noći mogu prespavati.
As carers, we can have so much that we're trying to process in our minds that we don't sleep very well, even if we have a few hours lying in the bed.
Kao njegovatelji često nam se previše toga mota po glavi da bismo mogli tih par sati koje dobijemo odspavati kako treba.
And there are lots of different tips that you can use to try and relax as best as you can in order to sleep well.
I ima puno savjeta kako se možete bolje opustiti da biste i te sate sna dobro iskoristili.
And again, I think this may be something to explore at the center if you're going to be doing some support for carers.
I vjerujem da i se i na tu temu može dati puno dobrih savjeta i u savjetovalištu kad se bude govorilo o toj podršci njegovateljima.
Of course, keeping active is very important.
Ostati aktivan je isto veoma bitno.
Finding some form of exercise or whatever it is, being outdoors, something that you enjoy doing.
Pronaći neku aktivnost, po mogućnosti izvan kuće, na otvorenom, nešto u čemu ćete uživati.
Whatever it is that brings you pleasure and gives you a sense of well-being, do it regularly.
Ma šta god to bilo da vam daje ona nekakav osjećaj zadovoljstva i da se osjećate dobro, činite to.
Just a couple of more things.
Još nekoliko stvari.
You will have to be making some difficult decisions.
Treba ćete povremeno raditi teške odluke.
For my mom to decide to put my father into a home was a tough decision.
Za moju majku da stavi oca u dom, to je bila teška odluka.
Where possible, I think it's important to think about it ahead of time and process it with someone.
I često je korisno o tome razmišljati puno prije vremena nego što stvarno dođe potreba za to i o tome razgovarati s nekim drugim.
As children, we had to have a lot of telephone conversations with my mom, just to convince her to start thinking in that way.
Kao djeca mi smo obavili puno razgovora telefonski sa majkom da bismo je ubijedili da uopće počne razmišljati o tome.
But in the end, I mean, she had no choice, and she had to make that decision, which was best for her and for my father too, actually.
I nakon punog razmišljanja i nagovaranja ona je ipak donijela tu odluku jer je to tako bilo najbolje i za nju i za oca.
But of course, you can feel you're forced to make a decision, and it's out of my control, and all kinds of emotions come up in that.
I naravno, to onda možete se osjećati da ste prisiljeni donijeti odluku, da je to nešto što je izvan vaše kontrole i sve ostale emocije.
One final thing.
I još jedna završna stvar.
Keep a sense of humor.
Zadržite smisao za humor.
Sometimes you've got to laugh at yourself, you've got to laugh at the situation, it's okay.
Koji puta jednostavno smijati se sebi samome ili situacije, to je sasvim u redu.
Somebody said that caring can be like starring in your own sitcom.
Koji puta ljudi znaju reći da je to njegovateljstvo kao da gledate svoj vlastiti sitcom.
Sharing those experiences with other people, having a good sense of humor can actually help to diffuse things sometimes.
Da, prepričavanje tih nekakvih dogodovština s drugim ljudima zna koji puta pomoći da se jednostavno smanji taj pritisak.
The final thing I think just wanted to say then, so moving forward from here, what can you do?
I evo još nešto onako kao da razmišljamo o tome što vi konkretno možete učiniti.
And here I want to hear from you.
I sad bih htio čuti malo vas.
3 things I was thinking about.
Ja sam razmišljala o 3 stvari.
And I did mention it yesterday.
Nisam to jučer spominjao.
But there needs to be some research done.
Ali očito je potrebno neke stvari obaviti nekakva istraživanja.
Some data needs to be generated about carers and caring here in Croatia, in Pula in particular.
Treba prikupiti neke podatke na temu općenito njegovateljstva i u Hrvatskoj ili u Puli.
How often do you have your census done here? Every 10 years, yeah. When's your next one?
2031.
Oh. 31, yeah, okay. So you've just had one.
To su popisi stanovništva, jel da?
Okay.
To popisi stanovništva, da.
Yeah.
Znači kako često imamo popisi stanovništva, svaki 10 godina, iduće 31. čuli smo.
Well, that gives you some time to make sure that you may be able to get 1 or 2 questions on the census about carers.
To znači da imamo određenog vremenskog prostora da uspijemo nagovoriti vlasti da stave pitanje 2 u te upitnike.
Because these things don't happen overnight. So, yeah, I mean, that may be one area to look at, trying to get some, a couple of questions on the next census. So there's some data about that.
Ne, znači, to bi značilo da onda jednostavno, recimo, probamo se organizirati u tom smjeru da se, ako ništa drugo, barem pitanje 2 postavi unutar tih upitnika na popisima stanovništva.
And Dr. here was mentioning for me yesterday, perhaps about medical research that can start to happen. I think that would be really, really good.
I liječnica ovdje je rekla da bi se vjerojatno mogli dogoditi neka od istraživanja s tog medicinskog aspekta i to bi bilo stvarno jako dobro.
If it's possible to, such suggested it yesterday, dissertations, some people that might want to start studying and looking at this some more, that would be a good way of generating data.
I bilo bi dobro da, ne znam, ako neko se prihvati neke doktorske dizertacije da radi na tu temu, to bi bilo odličan način da se prikupe podaci.
Often the challenge with getting research done, it's having funding for the research.
Sad, osim što bi bilo dobro napraviti istraživanje, treba prikupiti neka sredstva da se to istraživanje obavi.
So yes, I acknowledge that can be a challenge, but unless we have some data, some hard facts, it will be very difficult to move forward at all.
Mislim, bit će teško i prikupiti sredstva, ali ako se već imaju nekakvi podaci, onda to može biti baza da se, iako će biti teško, krene dalje.
A second thing I think is aiming for recognition of carers and caring.
I iduća stvar koju bi trebalo napraviti jeste poraditi na tom prepoznavanju uloge njegovatelja i njegovateljstva općenito.
In the UK we have the Equality Act of 2010.
U Engleskoj imamo taj jedan dokument iz 2010.
That talks about everyone having equal rights and access to all the services that are provided.
A u tom dokumentu se govori o tome da svi imaju jednaka prava, da imaju pristup svim tim nekakvim uslugama i ostalome što se nudi.
What's your equivalent?
We have that on the paper, only on paper.
It's on paper at
Mi imamo
least.
to na papiru.
All right. But at least, you see, if you have that on paper, that becomes the basis of your arguments with
Anyone
government
else?
and those in charge.
No dobro, ako već imamo na papiru to, i onda to može biti dobra baza da se ide u pregovore bilo sa vladajućim strukturama.
If you don't have that, then you have to get the policies in place first. But if you've got that, that's a good starting point at least.
A ako već imamo papir, to je već dobra polazna točka. Jer inače se treba prvo proizvesti papir, pa onda dalje.
So maybe one of the other things for recognition, I don't know, is do you have like a carers' rights day in your calendar? No?
Nemamo nikakav dan njegovatelja u nekakvom kalendaru da se negdje nešto obilježi.
We have that. We have Carers Week in the UK as well.
U Engleskoj imamo jedan tjedan njegovatelja.
But maybe that's something to think about. Can we somehow propose a carers information day to get that into local calendars or something like that?
Znači možda bi se moglo poraditi na tome da u nekakav lokalni kalendar ili tako negdje se stavi dan njegovatelja ili tako, da se daju ljudima informacije o tome.
Because often the first problem is that people are ignorant. They have no idea about carers or even realize that they are carers.
Znači, jer zapravo počinjemo od onog problema da su ljudi prilično ignorantni po tom pitanju, zapravo ne znaju, niti prepoznaju ulogu njegovatelja, niti su često svjesni da su oni sami njegovatelji.
So perhaps try to work towards a carers awareness day.
Recimo, dan svjesnosti o njegovateljstvu.
And, you know, you can, all kinds of things can happen, but be putting things in your local newspaper.
Svašta se pritom može napraviti, ali ako ništa drugo, dobit ćete članak u novinama.
If the local authority would recognize that and say, okay, we will advertise and perhaps have, I don't know, booths out and about so people can realize this is what carers are about.
Možda će i vlasti onda prepoznati i da tu cijelu kategoriju i onda možda nešto to potpomognu na neki način, možda nekakvim oglašavanjem ili šta je znam, u štampi, tako.
Some coordinated effort needs to be made so that people recognize, oh, there is such a thing as caring. And then once people realize that, then I think you'll realize there are a lot more people that are carers.
Znači jednostavno na taj način se podiže svjesnost o tom da postoji ta kategorija njegovateljstva i njegovatelja i ljudi kad počnu malo razmišljati o tome, onda se to diže na neku drugu razinu.
And then there's strength in numbers, because as more people realize that, then together they have a voice for those who are making the rules.
I onda kada ljudi osvijeste to u sebi, onda se okupe i puno je takvih ljudi i što ih je više u nekoj udruzi, to jači glas.
And finally, I think support is really important.
I naravno, izuzetno je bitna ta podrška.
That we realize that we're not alone.
Da shvatimo da nismo sami.
And that carers, if you can come together in some ways, it would be really very good.
I ako njegovatelji se na neki način mogu naći negdje, to bi bilo jako, jako dobro.
I was looking at different countries have different things that they do.
U različitim zemljama, koliko sam vidio, postoje različite stvari koje oni rade.
In Thailand, they have something called carers cafes.
Recimo u Tajlandu, oni imaju nešto što zovu njegovateljski kafe.
Maybe that's one of the things for your center as well, to think about, this day we'll have a carers cafe, drop in if you like, we'll talk some,
Evo, recimo, to je mogla biti aktivnost jednom u savjetovalištu da se svako toliko organizira nekakav kafe, da ljudi mogu samo doći malo proći popričati.
Starting online forums where people, Facebook and all those kind of things, people, again, starting to connect with one another and becoming a coordinated voice.
Ili recimo imati nekakav online forum na Facebooku ili gdje god, jer onda ljudi se počnu nekako udruživati i imati zajednički glas.
In the UK, they are working towards having a carer's passport.
U Engleskoj rade na tome da njegovatelji dobiju nekakvu knjižicu.
That you can show, for example, when you go to hospitals and wherever else, so that they recognize, then we know this person has all of these added burdens on top of what is shown.
Tako da onda i ako recimo odu u bolnicu ili tako negdje i pokažu tu svoju njegovateljsku knjižicu, onda budu prepoznati kao osobe koje imaju nekakav dodatni teret na sebi.
But somehow bringing people together and realizing that we're not alone and helping one another will be a really important thing to try and achieve.
Ali u svakom slučaju to pokušavanje da se ljudi nekako umreže, da se nekako povežu, to je veliki cilj koji bi valjalo postići.
So those were just a few of the things that I was thinking of.
To su neke stvari o kojima sam ja razmišljao.
Let me hear from you.
Šta imate vi za reći?
Your reactions, your whatever.